children's gender transition madness continues in Canada. Tonight, in Ottawa, experts and individuals with first-hand lived experience are sounding the alarm.
My biggest crime is that I say there's only two genders.
In Canada, there needs to be a spark like we did in the United States, where we actually pushed people through with, what is a woman and some other things that we did. So am I comfortable with who I am now? I'm getting there. Would I medically transition again? Absolutely not, but I did it and it's done.
We are here in Ottawa at the Bikers Church, where Canadian veteran Jeff Everly has organized a Mayday town hall focused on the growing controversy surrounding children's gender transitions in Canada. We expected to see protesters upon our arrival, but surprisingly, none showed up. My colleague Tamara Ugolini has already done a report on Jeff Everly's case. After returning from overseas deployment, he says he discovered his then 16-year-old daughter was already being treated at the CHEO Gender Clinic, and he recorded conversations with the clinic that he later made public. It's a report you won't want to miss. But today, this conversation goes even further. Experts and individuals with lived experience will be speaking out, offering their perspective on what they believe is happening across Canada. We'll be hearing firsthand from Scott Nugent, a trans man many of you may recognize from the documentary What is a Woman by Matt Walsh.
We cannot change our sex, and medical transition cures nothing. Merely adds physical and mental complications we are just beginning to understand due to the experimental nature of this cosmetic medical procedure.
The panel also features Mia Hughes, Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.
It takes an order of magnitude more effort to refute misinformation than it does to produce it. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the debate surrounding gender medicine.
Dr. Anne Gillies, Canadian trauma specialist.
There's no objective test, no scan, no blood work to determine that a child is in the wrong body.
Barry Neufeld, former school trustee from Chilliwack, BC, who has been fined $750,000 by the Human Rights Tribunal in his province for critiquing the harm to children by medically transitioning children.
I'm still convinced that probably the worst enemies that we have in trying to turn back this flood of nonsense is cowardice.
Kelly Lynn Perry, detransitioner and founder of Detrans Alliance Canada.
Oversimplistic, ideologically driven narratives often further to fracture rather than to heal already fragile and fragmented identities.
Faith Grollo, detransitioner activist.
And I was lost. I was terrified in a world that I didn't know how to navigate, with adults who didn't know how to protect me, and another set of adults with white coats who were perfectly willing to hurt me.
And Chris Fleury, lawyer and charter advocate.
If you look at the average among male inmates for convicted sex offenders, you have about 20%. For trans-identified biologically male inmates seeking a transfer into a female institution, the number is 45%.
We'll be speaking with them directly and bringing you key moments from the panel discussion. At Ruben News, we have a petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com. If you want, you can go and sign the petition to make sure that we need to stop what is happening in the school system, the indoctrination about gender ideology. If you can, also subscribe to our YouTube channel and let a comment.
Well, in Canada, everybody in the country's kind of put some kind of pause on medically transitioning children, but here in Canada, it's like full speed ahead. And so I've always said that when people stand up who are transgender, people who stand up that are in the gay and lesbian community against medically transitioning kids, it hits a little bit harder than, if an evangelical stands up and speaks out against it. So in Canada, there needs to be a spark like we did in the United States, where we actually pushed people through with, what is a woman and some other things that we did, where people were able to sit back and go, hey, you know what is going on with medically transitioning kids? Once that happens, and hopefully we're doing that now, people are going to have conversations. When you have conversations about medically transitioning children, nobody walks away going, yep, I still think that's a good idea.
Jeff Everly, you actually organized this beautiful panel tonight. Can you explain why it was important to bring so many different backgrounds, different people to speak about the madness that we are experiencing here in Canada, and why you also wanted to be at the Parliament today?
Well, I've been seeing some cracks forming in this narrative around gender ideology for the last several months, perhaps starting with the Tumbler Ridge incident. And I'm not saying that I know what was really going on with Jesse Strang there, but we did see a level of institutional capture where the police were even reporting on a shooter at large as a woman in a dress instead of a man in a dress, which is a public safety issue. And also a public safety issue would be that people had to move their funerals because they were getting threats after referring to Jesse Strang as male. So I saw a lot of kind of scales falling from eyes around that time, and we've had a few developments in the last month, or the last few months, with the study coming out of Finland, with Dr. Ketchadorian being in the National Post and saying that it's time to roll this back, that I think we're pretty well timed for this event. So in other words, the cracks were starting to form in this dam, and I just wanted to come to Ottawa and give it a kick. Anytime you try to take this on, you just get called a bigot, you get called a homophobe. So I brought a trans man, I brought a D-trans woman, I brought a D-trans young person, and the visual of that, I think, it makes it much harder to attack, and I think that this is the kind of thing that needs to happen in order to reach those people.
The research is very, it goes from about 15% almost to 70%, depending on what study you're looking at, that are the trans children that are autistic. Mm-hmm. And even if they're on the autism spectrum, what happens is these children are so vulnerable, and it's any vulnerable child. So think of the physically abused, the child beaten, the children whose parents have divorced, and it's a terrible situation in either home. And there's so much money to be made in all of those things. It all comes back to money and robbing children of their identity, totally of their identity.
My biggest crime is that I say there's only two genders, and they say that I'm denying the existence of all the other genders. And that's existential denialism, which is their definition of hate. And it doesn't make sense.
So whatever you do, don't make it worse. We do have the potential to fall to tyranny or state collapse every time we go into one of these crisis eras, but we also have an opportunity to shape the future, to shape a brighter future for our young people.
Are you surprised that there is no media who attended this panel tonight?
Not in the slightest. We sent a press release out well in advance, not just the Parliamentary Press Gallery release, but we did one of our own, and I can tell you that it went out to all the mainstream, and we got no traction. I was happy to see when we were up in the Parliamentary Press Gallery, actually we had CTV, City News, and Western Standard were there. So we'll see what CTV and City News do with it. But Western Standard was quite good to ask some questions, let us use the full hour that we had for our presentation plus the Q&A, and I thought it went really well. Actually, it gave me hope, because even the guys who were working there, some of the guys on the cameras and stuff were saying, this is what needs to happen now. We need to be hearing from the people who've been affected by this, and I personally think that is the way forward. We need to empower a lot of these young people who've been devastated by this ideology, to really show the harms that have been done.
What was your first reaction when you heard that the WHO was removing gender dysphoria from mental illnesses?
Oh, when I first, yes. Well, I just knew we were in for free fall because so it was gender identity disorder that they removed and then put gender dysphoria in there, and which made it downplayed it. It's like so much of what happens with the American Psychological Society or Association that they are minimizing some very severe issues in order to placate, I would say, people with big purse strings that really are trying to bring in an agenda that is going to actually cripple our children.
The union contract that teachers have to keep it confidential if a child wants to come out as gay or trans at school. If the child does not want the teacher to tell the parents, they won't. So little Sally might head off to school in the morning and say goodbye to her mom. She gets to school. She goes into the Superman closet, changes into her boy's costume, and everybody at school knows her as Billy. But the teacher will not tell people, is not allowed to tell the parents that. And that's making parents very uneasy. I mean, teachers are squandering their good reputation because parents don't trust them anymore when they're keeping major secrets like that from them. And but even the kids that are not transitioning, they've got this confusion and this doubt rising up, and our kids, their academic scores are plummeting. In the last 8 years where they've been really pushing this transgender nonsense, the academic scores in English, socials, and math are going way down.
Do you think it's possible in Canada, especially when we look at our mainstream media? Our media is mainly subsidized by the government. There is no debate. We are seeing schools who are being radicalized. We are seeing all kinds of things that is happening in Canada. Do you think it is possible for Canada to open up?
Well, I think they will. I don't think it's a matter of if they will. They have to. The whole idea of medically transitioning children will stop. The only thing that I'm doing and the other people are doing up here is we're trying to stop it sooner rather than later. We're trying to save more children because, we're seeing the carnage of it. This is a medical process that causes massive health issues, causes early onset osteoporosis, causes more medical issues. It causes hearts and lungs the size of 12-year-olds at 20 that'll never grow to be, full. It's pulmonary embolisms, heart disease. I mean, we can go on and on what it's causing these kids, but nobody's talking about it. So all we need to do is get that person in Canada in the living room that doesn't want to say anything, that knows it's wrong, and they can watch one person that spoke and went, okay, that gives me a little bit of something. I feel okay to say something. We just need to start talking.
What's your question?
What can we do? What can I do when I go away?
What you're doing right now. And if you can't do what you're doing right now, then you need to find somebody to support.
How do I find people?
I'm right here. She's right here.
All right,
there. All right there.
This time around, the counter demonstration was actually very small. And they were quite young, and I would say, radical. But what we did is we just walked over and started talking to them. Mm-hmm. And, I brought Faith Grolou with me, and she's a very courageous 26-year-old detransitioner. And we just engaged in conversation. We tried to engage them in conversation. And it didn't work with everybody, but several people I had a very cordial discussion with, including a trans person who started out quite hostile, but really the temperature came down throughout the course of the conversation. And Faith had an excellent conversation with probably the most aggressive person there, who was a trans man, and Faith is a detrans woman now. And they were sitting on the grass and just having a nice back and forth by the end of it, like really brought the temperature down. And that's what I think needs to happen. Everybody's got their guards up. Get them to bring those guards down so they can hear what you're actually saying.
How did you react to see the discussion that Jeff Everly had with the person in charge of his daughter?
Good for him for recording that, because that is exactly the kind of this kind of stuff is just so, there's no basis for transitioning children. There is no medical basis. Like I said, there's no medical test, There's no blood test. There's no scan. You cannot diagnose transgender. You can diagnose gender dysphoria or, general dis-ease with their sexuality. Talk to a child, you could diagnose it yourself. This child's, struggling with puberty, really. But when you have medical professionals saying, well, I can't give you any evidence for that, we need to be firing the medical professionals. If you don't have evidence for this, why would you ever do this?
We are seeing more and more people using now tribunals to go against people. Do you think this is dangerous in our society?
Well, it's dangerous, but I think the pendulum is starting to swing back. Our Conservative Party in British Columbia is really getting strong. There's 5 people running for leadership, and every one of them want to do away with SOGI. They want to ban puberty blockers. They want to ban hormone therapy. They want to ban transgender surgery. And when I first said that 8 years ago, they called me a hateful bigot. Well, now major political leaders in British Columbia are starting to say it. And they're also talking about banning human rights tribunals. The only leadership candidate who doesn't want to ban them is a former member of Parliament, Kelly Lynn Finlay, and she was a human rights judge here in Ottawa. And she says there is an important role for tribunals, but the British Columbia one has stepped way out of bounds by going up to $750,000 and trying to ruin somebody's life.
Where is the main cause of all this youth transitioning? Is it from social media? Is it from school influence? Where that all emerged?
Well, I said it up here, the fact that when we won gay marriage in 2015, what happened is we lost all our donations. We lost all our donations, and LGBTQ organizations across the world started to claim bankruptcy until they started to sign on with medically transitioning children. So they found something else. That's the worst thing that can happen in activism, is actually being successful. Once you're successful, you have no more donations. And when you have no more donations, things kind of fold. And so what happened is that we've created this trans in kids, this ideology that is so unhealthy, so dangerous, that it's spun out of control like a tornado, that we've spun out of control on the other side with a tornado. So we've got right and left that are so far right, so far left, that nobody's speaking in the middle. And the middle is that there are some people that medically transition and find comfort in that. There are. But there needs to be, therapy and years of therapy before somebody medically transitions. It shouldn't be children. But until we start to speak in the middle, until things start to get gray, it's not gonna get better. And unfortunately, Canada is so far in Looney Tuneville.
And for you, would you have done the same thing? Like I see now that you live as a trans man. Are you comfortable still with being a trans man, or do you regret everything that you passed through?
Well, that's a really good question. So you asked several questions there. Would I medically transition again? No, but I did it. And that's another thing that we're kind of lifting in the news and social media, that you can detransition. Girls who take testosterone for a long period of time, you can't detransition. You will forever look like and have male characteristics. So am I comfortable with who I am now? I'm getting there. Would I medically transition again? Absolutely not, but I did it, and it's done.
I do think that the pendulum is coming back. It seems to be happening sort of one issue at a time, and I would say, we have guys like Slug Ford out there talking about Castle Doctrine, which is not something any politician would touch just 5 minutes ago, to talk about firearms rights for the purpose of self-defense. That was verboten in Canada up until very recently. But now we have politicians crying for it. And we have seen, like Leslyn Lewis actually said something about the gender ideology in response to Dr. Ketchadorian's article in the National Post. So, like I said, like the cracks are forming. I'm starting to feel a shift. The pendulum, I think, is about to start coming back. So, but it doesn't move on its own. You know, we got to get active. We got to get out there, eat that elephant one bite at a time. But we'll get it back.
At Ribbon News, we have a petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com. If you want, you can go and sign the petition to make sure that we need to stop what is happening in the school system, the indoctrination about gender ideology. If you can, also subscribe to our YouTube channel and let a comment.